And yet, we can see God doing a new thing in Coeur d'Alene. There's talk of change, of a revival of peace and joy in the hearts of all of God's children. These stories are the first fruits. They are the cloud the size of a man's hand that Elijah's servant saw, signifying the coming torrential downpour. They are the budding of spring, lending notion to the summer God is bringing to this community. Because of God's tender mercy, the morning light from heaven is about to break upon us, to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, and to guide us to the path of peace.
My name's Zach. Grew up in Idaho, in Twin Lakes. I believed in God growing up. My parents were both Christian. I said I was Christian, but didn't really follow it. Didn't know what it meant to really be a Christian and really follow the Lord. I met my best friend in 4th grade, and we were hanging out one day, and we were snooping through my cousin's house, which was right by my house, and we found an Altoids can with some pot in it, and so that day was the first time I smoked pot, and from then on it was basically just a downward spiral. Alcohol and pot was all I did for a little while, but then I started experimenting with other drugs, hallucinogens and cocaine and ecstasy, and a relationship. I met this girl, Molly, and I totally fell in love with this girl. She kind of played with my heart a lot, and I think that's where a lot of my deeper drug use started happening, because I was depressed from that. Opiates, I started using pills, and that led to heroin, and then it was the needle. And so basically every day was doing drugs to I suppose numb the pain from that. And like I said, it started off fun, but an experiment, but then it became this vicious cycle where every day I woke up, I had to be high. I just thought that being dead would be easier than living and dealing with some of the things I dealt with inside. A good friend of mine, Destiny, she went through the Good Samaritan Ranch. She prayed for me the whole time I was in there. I ended up going in there, and that was where I found the Lord. And like I said, I believed in God, but I didn't know what it was like to commit my life to Him. And I remember this peace that came over me that was like nothing I've ever felt. And I remember sitting on the couch, and I couldn't stop smiling for the rest of the day. And from that day forward, everything changed. I couldn't steal candy anymore. I stopped cussing. And the desire to seek the Lord totally outweighed the desire of drugs and any girls, any women, anything of the world, the party, and the Lord just came into my heart and changed everything.
Well, my name is Sarah, and I grew up in a Christian home. So I grew up knowing about the Lord and about the Bible. And then as I got older, my family moved. We moved when I was going into the 9th grade. And it was right after we moved that I started to I got really depressed, and I missed my friends. And my first suicide attempt, I was in 9th grade. Like, I remember sitting there, and it was so sad for me to be so far from my friends and what I thought was my home. So at the end of 9th grade, I started using drugs, just smoking some pot, and I was already using quite a bit, was very depressed, and I started using meth. That was just a really awful time in my life because I couldn't stop using, and I also just came to this point where it was like there was no hope and I had no reason to go on, and so I started cutting at that time, and it was like a way to, I don't know, I guess a way to deal with my depression, but I also felt like no one cared that I was stuck in this horrible life, and it was like I was no good to anyone. I wasn't good to my family because I was high all the time, or when I wasn't high I was angry. It was at this point where it was like I didn't want to keep using and I couldn't stop, and And so I went over to my parents' house, and my little sister was there, and I don't even know what she said. She said something, and it was just like, it just solidified in me that I had no worth, and that I was absolutely, there was no point in me being alive. And so I remember I left there and I went to my older sister's house who was out of town, and I took every pill she had in her cupboard, and I was sitting in her house and I thought to myself, well, I can't let her kids come home. She has 2 kids. And so I went out, I actually drove myself to the ER, and I got arrested, and I went to prison. And I'd always thought when I got to prison it would be a relief, because it was like the end of my drug use and I couldn't use anymore because the consequences got worse. At that point there was not an ounce of hope in my life, and I had no reason to live. The people of the place where I was living had found Good Samaritan Rehabilitation, and then I told the Lord when I got here that He had a week, because I've done this for years and years and years, and I was like 24 at the time, and I just was not gonna do it again, and I was not going back to prison, and I was not living the way I'd been living. It was like my 3rd day there. I think I took apart a razor and I hid it upstairs, and planned on going up into the mountain to kill myself on Sunday. And we drove to town, and I remember going to church and everyone was praying and they were all happy, and I thought it was the stupidest thing I'd ever done. And this lady comes and sits down next to me, and she's like, well, you look like you need a hug. And I was like, wow, like, I mean, you lady, you don't know who I am. I'm this horrible drug addict, and I mean, I've not done anything good in my life, and you want to give me a hug. And so I said, yeah, I guess I do. And I said to her, I said, do you really believe that God forgives? And she said, yeah, I do. And I prayed with her, and the Lord came into my life like right then, and I've never, ever, and I've made some bad choices since then, but I've never been in that hopeless place again.
Will your grace rise?
It was me, my little brother, and my mom, and I fell in love with Jesus. I was only 5, but I just fell in love with Jesus. And my mom tells me countless stories of when I would just ask, why we couldn't just pray for Satan and have him be saved. And I went to New Life. I got baptized when I was 8, and my mom met my stepdad at New Life. And things just completely changed in my life after they got married. He was a godly man in church, but then behind closed doors, he was a completely different person. And things just got continually worse. I got mad at God. I got angry at God. And I didn't want anything to do with the church or religion or him anymore. And I started using drugs. I started seeking after unhealthy relationships. When I was 13, I lost my virginity, and after that, throughout high school, it was relationship after relationship, seeking for love. I think I was more looking for the love of my father that was not there. And I was so depressed all throughout school. I cut myself. I was just lost. And the more that I was seeking after that love, I just became so fragmented and just lost so much of myself. I didn't know who I was, and I was trying to find my identity in relationships and drugs and friendships and all the wrong things. And I became really rebellious. I didn't listen to any rules that my mom tried to set for me. The drugs just completely took over my life. I was an IV user, heroin. I was sick, so sick all the time. I had no hope at all of ever changing. I found my identity in the drugs, and I thought that I was going to be a drug addict for the rest of my life. And I had no hope of ever recovering or ever changing. In 2009, my mom set up an appointment for me to meet with Pastor Tim Remington at the altar, and I went in and spoke with him, and he told me that they had a bed open that day if I would pack. I did, and that was the first time in my life since I was just a little girl that I really saw the power of God, and I knew it was truth. And it was probably the best 4 months of my life. I had true joy when I went through that rehab, and it got robbed as soon as I left because I didn't surrender my whole heart. And so it's those little compromises that lead you back. And that's when things really got bad. I started shooting at meth, and I once again was homeless, and I sold myself for drugs, and I lost my mind. God stripped me of everything that I found value in this world. I realized at that moment that I didn't want to die like I thought I did. Throughout the years, I've just wanted to die. I didn't care about my life. I didn't have any hope. And at that moment, I realized that I didn't want to die. I wanted Jesus. I wanted that joy that I experienced in 2009 when I went through the ranch. And so it was that day that God granted me repentance. And since then, He's done a radical conversion in my life. And it's by fully surrendering my heart to the Lord. And I have joy, I have peace, I have hope. And it's all because of Jesus Christ that I'm alive. And that He's given me a hope and a new heart. And it's all by Him, so.
I'd grown up with Christianity. It was what I was taught from my parents. I'm about 15 or 16 years old. I just kind of woke up and I realized I didn't believe it. So I started putting my faith into other things like relationships or in drugs, because I thought if I could take something that I could hold, that I could feel, that could take it away, that could take the pain away, that I could stop thinking about all the things that I was thinking about. So I started seeing counselors and therapists and psychologists, and nothing was working. There was something that was always missing. One night, I was sitting in my bed, and I was just done. And I had talked with God. I didn't know if it was Jesus or Allah or whoever I was talking to, you know, but I talked to God, and I said, I think I'm done. I think I'm done, man. I tried. I did. And I took the rest of my bottle of my pills, and I swallowed them all. And I was just so ashamed of what I'd done, but I couldn't bear to tell my mom that I was trying to end my life. Nothing happened to me that night, and I remember I was angry at God because I was done. I was so done. I didn't want to live anymore. So why is He keeping me alive? I was just so disheartened and so sad because I just wanted to fall asleep forever and to just not have to deal with anything else that I was going through. And I had lines of Oxycontin cut out, and I remember just staring back at myself and thinking, I just don't want to be you anymore. I ended up, it was Christmas time, and I got together with my parents, and I told them everything. And I said, I need help, I need something, and I need to change quick. And they said, all right, we want you to talk to this pastor, this Tim guy. He talked to me about God and about Jesus and about what real love is like. I started to pray and ask God, I was like, can I have that love? And could you just send me somebody that could show me that? This lady from the back of the church comes walking up to the front, and she walks right up to me, and she says, I need to talk to you. And she's like, you don't feel God's love, do you? And I said, no, I don't. And she said, you don't know God's purpose for you, do you? And I said, no, I don't. And she said, and she had this German accent, and she said, I sing for you. And I was like, oh, okay. And she started singing Jesus Loves Me. And it was beautiful. And then she asked if she could pray for me. And she hugged me, and she asked that I could feel it, that I could see God's love, that I could be shown. And at that moment, it hit me. And I was like, that's it. It's that love that I've been looking for. And I thanked her. And I thanked God. And I told him that from that day forward, I wouldn't be the same person that I was. I wouldn't do the same things I had done. And that this is real and that it is all or nothing. And I gave my life to it.
Well, my name's Tim Remington. We talk about suicide, we talk about depression, we talk about the things that really get to us and everything, but the bottom line is to it is no hope. I came to Christ getting ready to want to commit suicide at the Devil's Turn on the Oregon coast, where the water comes in and it's all churned up and it's all, you just know that nothing's going to survive in this thing. And so you know that if you can get down there, then they're not going to be able to get you out. It's not a mess for anybody else. Nobody has to find you. The only thing they're going to find is an old 69 Dodge van on the side of the road somewhere. And it wasn't because I was bad on drugs or bad on alcohol or bad relationships. I looked at the world and saw no hope. Everybody to me, including Christianity, it was like it was hopeless. It's like you look at people and they were just like bummed. Christians were bummed, the world was bummed, and everybody talked about the joy of the Lord, and yet I couldn't find that much joy. I just looked at people and people were depressing. And so if a person sees no hope, then there's nothing you're going to be able to do. That you have to give them hope. The bottom line is they need somebody that really loves them. They need vision. Without a vision, they're going to perish. That's very biblical. So after I came to Christ, not only did I not want to, hurt myself anymore, but I was able to see so many other people that needed that same hope that I had. I've seen a lot of suicides. I have seen a lot of people kill themselves. Some people fast, some people slow. But for the most part, they do it because they cannot see themselves getting off the meds. They can't see themselves back with their families again. They can't see themselves being accepted in society or ever having a life. And life in Christ is a dream come true. Not that you're without trials or anything, but life in Christ is a dream come true. And depression doesn't have to be. You can have a hope. You can have a dream. You can have a family. You can get your family back. When you finally internally get something that fulfills you, then you're there. You don't even know how it hits you. The people that give their testimonies, it was here one day and I felt really bad, and then all of a sudden the next day it was like, wow, I don't have that anymore, but I still am working on my future. I'm working on a hope. I'm working on my vision. It's about having a personal peace of knowing that you are operating in a position that God has created you to do, a purpose in your life, having the confidence to be able to get it done, and knowing that God is there and He's paving a way for you and giving you an incredible vision. That's what brought me out of suicidal tendencies. That's what brought me out of depression. That's what's brought hundreds that I can give you testimonies on all day out of depression. And we need a whole community to be able to understand this if we're going to really stop suicide. I love people. I really love people, and I really love Jesus. And I know that if people get a hold of Jesus, their lives will be radically changed. So my goal, lead people to Jesus. Lead people, hug them, embrace them, tell them that you love them. Don't be afraid of them. The ones that are going to kill themselves want to keep you at bay. You move right in. You love the daylights out of them, and eventually they break. They do break. We've had hundreds, if not thousands, break. We've rehabbed 1,028 people now, and they broke. And they got a hold of Christ. So, love you. Bless you.
Okay, I grew up in a single-parent household. My parents divorced when I was 7. They officially divorced, and I believe that that's when the desperation in my life really hit. I didn't grow up knowing the Lord. I didn't grow up having that support system of the body of Christ. When my parents divorced, I started seeking out any kind of attention I could get from males. I was really just seeking anything that I could hold on to that would make me feel loved. My first suicide attempt happened when I was about 14 years old. By the time I was a teenager, I had so many behavioral problems that they had me just medicated to the T. So my first suicide attempt had happened when I was dating an older boy. I was just so desperate to be loved, especially by a man. And since I had not had really any kind of anything to measure what that love from a man should really look like, I would just grasp onto anything that came my way, which led up to many relationships of just being used and thrown away. I had no reason to be living anymore. I did not want to have to continue to go through my life feeling like I was nothing. I took a bottle of my sleeping medication at the time. I don't really remember a whole lot of the situation. I know that my respiratory system had shut down when I got to the hospital. I was unconscious for several days. I don't remember a whole lot, but I know that my mom never left my side. And everywhere that I found this love that I was looking for was, through drugs or through relationships or men. And as long as I had a purpose, even if it was finding my next fix, I felt like I can continue to live my life. And through the prayers of the whole entire house that I was in, and through the support and encouragement of continuing to fight through these emotions and to seek God in it and what He has to say about my life, I feel like that's the thing that got me through. I feel like I had been looking for love in so many different avenues, and the whole time I had it sitting on my shelf, getting dusty, and hadn't cracked it open because nobody told me. And finally, I have all these people telling me about what Jesus did for me. I was so desperate to be loved. And He had loved me the whole time. And it was a struggle. It wasn't, some people get saved radically, and I had my own process to go through. And I still had a lot of decisions that I needed to make, and I still had a lot of faith that needed to be built up inside of me to be able to just trust that there was something that was bigger than all of us, and He had orchestrated something so beautiful to happen so that I may go to heaven. A lot of people have a time and a day that they got saved. I know that I got saved October of last year. I know that it's been almost a year that I've been clean. It's been a year of encouragement and motivation to continue to do the right thing because somebody had died for my sins. For the first time in my life, I found undefiled, untainted love. Since I've come to Christ, I haven't had anything happen to me, or I haven't had any outside circumstances that have rocked my world so much that I don't want to live in it anymore. I have a purpose. I have love. I have amazing things. I have amazing friends. I have a wonderful husband. I have this relationship with people, and I have that love that I was looking for the whole time. I'm just completely a different person now. And it was only through Jesus that I would ever be saved. And so I believe that it's hard and life gets tough, but when you have Jesus, it's all worth it just to push through it.
I don't really know what I want to do. I guess just live day-to-day life. I want to have a family. I want to have kids, and I just want to help people and just enjoy life.
And I help run a transitional home for women. I guess I'm finally at this place where I don't think about using. I don't think about drugs. I don't think about smoking. I get up every day and my alarm goes off and I'm really happy. I get up, I get out of bed, and it's a joy to be able to live my life.
now. I just started Bible school, and I just want to be used by the Lord. I don't see the point of doing anything else besides serving God, and He's just given me a passion for the lost. I just pray that He's able to use my testimony to be able to affect the lives of other people. I'm really involved in my church, and I just love Jesus, and I just want to be used by Him.
I'm really happy where I am. I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm involved in youth ministry now. Now I get to talk to kids who feel like they have no hope, like I did. I get to preach to them, and I get to pray with them and get to tell them that there's a way out. It's the way out that everybody has, and it's Jesus Christ.
I would tell them that they need to put their hope in Jesus. He's the only one that can heal your heart. He's the only one that can give you life more abundantly. Outside of Christ, you're dead. You're in the congregation of the dead. And you're just, there is no hope outside of Him.
Today, I am married, and the Lord's been faithful to me in my marriage. I'm also participating now at helping women in recovery. I go back to the rehab program that I had gone through. I go back to Good Samaritan every week, and I get to talk to the women in that program that are going through the same things that I had gone through. And we get to learn about the Bible. We get to learn to walk out a daily way of life, and the struggles that we overcome and the struggles that we feel like we can't overcome. And I get to help motivate them, and I get to let them know what true undefiled love is. I would say that life may look grim, but if you change the perspective you have of life and what that life is supposed to be, then the outcome, then everything that has happened in your life, all the bad things, all the hurtful things, all the pain that you have is just eclipsed by glory.